All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat,
And I am Stan.
and Eric is going to be taking this episode out. He's actually not feeling too well. He's okay, but makes sense. But he'll be back next week. But on to the topics for this week. We're going to give our thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo. Last week, Eric was able to play it. Me and Stan had not played it. So we primarily talked about Eric's thoughts with the demo and went over some of the story changes, really off the cuff remarks. I think Eric literally put the controller down to do the podcast. So it was very, very fresh. So me and Stan have had a chance to play it a few times, and we're going to give some more thoughts on the demo. And then we're going to get into the bucket loads of Final Fantasy VII Remake news that's been going out there. There's a lot of it. We have interviews with Katase and Nomura, and we're going to be reading lots of quotes and just getting into some of the stuff they're bringing up about the remake. So it's that time of year, guys. Final Fantasy VII Remake's coming out in about a month. So we're going to be covering it a lot. And, but we do have something at the end of the podcast that we want to bring up that's not 7 Remake related. There's a new game coming to the Switch, which I've never played before, but looks awesome. It's called, I think it's pronounced Brigandine. Stan, what do you think?
Brigandine, I think.
Brigandine. Yeah,
Brigandine.
so it's kind of this tactile JRPG. It came out back in the 90s, and now they're making a sequel, and it's got some really big name people working on it, so it looks really, really exciting. So we want to talk about that. And then we're going to be introducing at some point within this podcast a news segment where we're going to ask you to, we're going to test your knowledge of whether or not you know this JRPG character. This is actually a JRPG character that Eric picked. We have a little silhouette of him, so we're gonna pop it up on the screen and see if you guys can guess who it is in the comments. I actually still don't know who the character is. I know what game they're from, but I can't remember their name. So I'm in on it. Anyways, so let's go ahead and get started. So, like I said before, we're going to be talking about our Final Fantasy VII Remake demo thoughts. We're going to be breaking this up in gameplay and then story. So, Stan, you want to start us off with gameplay? Let's start off with your positives of the gameplay. And then if you have any negatives, we can transition into that after I give my positives as well.
You want to go first? I'm sending out our link.
Sure.
For the show.
So I'm not gonna lie. I do have some negatives later to get into with the gameplay, but it's overwhelmingly positive. I will sympathize with the way Eric felt on the last podcast, because he literally, guys, he got to play the demo one time, and then he came on here and he was like, I was a little frustrated the first time, but I might get used to it. I was feeling slightly the same way, but I got through it and then I played it again. And it just clicked with me. I really, really liked the gameplay. And I think the biggest thing that stood out for me, and this is kind of a wacky thing to bring up, but I've really felt like the tutorial setup for the demo was really well done. It was really well paced. A lot of times with JRPGs, you get stuck in this rut where they just bombard you with a wall of text or pages, right? And it's throwing at you what every single button does in every single scenario. And I'm getting stressed out, wiping sweat off my brow. I feel like I need to take notes. It's a little stressful sometimes. So this was really well done. I mean, they started off with you just going into an area and it's hey, this is how you attack. Go ahead, try that. And you attacked. And it was no big deal. And they built up with the story that, you're a mercenary, so you're there to fight. So you got to learn the battle system just as Cloud. And then later in the game, once you've mastered Cloud, or at least got used to Cloud, they brought in Barrett, and now you could try to do 2 characters. And it was just this nice flow of just one page of a couple sentences. It tells you how to do 1 or 2 things. You try it in the next battle. It wasn't super difficult, right? And it slowly just built up from there. So I think that was the biggest positive I could say from the demo standpoint, was just excellent tutorial design. And for JRPGs, that's meaning, well, really Western RPGs too, that means a lot. Did you walk away with the same impression, Stan, or
Um, yes, like, hmm. Well, I actually thought the certain parts of the tutorial was a little handholdy. Um,
I love it. I
I
love it.
mean, in their credit, like we didn't get like a use the left joystick to move the character type of thing, which I like.
Right. We didn't have Final Fantasy 12 where, Bosch is like at the gate and he's like, press X to open the gate. Yeah.
Yeah, but we did get like um a little prompt that said like push triangle to open a chest, and if it says hold triangle, you need to hold the button down.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Like,
But the thing was, it was like 3 sentences, maybe four, and it
hmm,
was one page.
yeah,
They didn't drag it out. It wasn't like they put a chest in front of you and then you had to hold triangle. And if you didn't hold triangle, that like a Moogle came out and it's like, no, try again. Like,
yeah,
it
that's
was
true.
it was there if you wanted it, but you could just skip it real quick if you didn't.
Yeah, it could have been much worse. And like you said, to their credit, it's when something pops up, it's pretty much all on one page, and you read it and you're done. You keep playing. So in that respect, I think it was good. And also like they you kind of fight the enemies in like little waves, like two guards, and then like the next encounter is two guards again, and then you get three guards, and then you get two guards and a dog, and they kind of just like introduce it to you pretty slow.
Right.
They don't throw anything at you that you um, wouldn't reasonably be able to handle, based on what's come before. So in that respect, it was like well paced tutorial, I think.
Yeah. And like, I think that I guess really well balanced for me because in the beginning half was just kind of that hand holding experience you get, but like it breaks you into it like fairly quick. I mean, it tells you how to do one thing, tells you how to do
Mm,
one thing in the next part, one thing in the next part, and then pretty soon you're fighting a mini boss, right? And
hmm.
then like that ending boss with the scorpion, dude, that was a legit boss battle for a demo. Like I was struggling there for a little bit. Like I had to actually put in some strategy, but I don't know. What'd you think of the gameplay? I've been talking too much. I feel like.
No, no, no worries. I really like it. Gosh, I'm not even sure where to begin. It seems very well balanced in that they looked at issues that people had with FF15 and like addressed them like
Hmm.
very deliberately.
Yeah.
So like one of the big issues people had with that game was you can just hold down um, block essentially, or block and evade was the same button in FF15 for the most part, where you can just hold square or L1 depending on how you set up your controls, and Noctis won't get hit unless he's like recovering from an attack animation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then so you're either holding evade or you're holding attack, right? That's all. That's 90% of what you do. You choose to play defense or play offense, basically. And in this game, they they give you kind of satisfying chain combos that you can do with Cloud, right?
Hmm.
But he can be interrupted, like if he gets hit, especially by the Scorpion boss, right? Who has these big, wide swinging attacks. Like Cloud can get
Yeah.
interrupted quite easily. So you kind of have to pick and choose like better, like when you can actually launch your full string of attacks. So you might play more cautiously because of that.
I I
And
I was gonna one little tidbit there. Like I totally agree with you. One thing that I really liked was when you use a potion, like the scorpion has a chance of interrupting you, right?
mm-hmm,
Whereas in 15, that was like that was such a hole in the gameplay because you would use a potion and there would be this like little animation and like you were invincible for like a couple of seconds. And you
mm-hmm.
could really use that to your advantage to like get out of a particular boss hit, just use a item. You don't even need it, right? Just
Yeah.
99 potions. You don't need it. You have 8,000 HP, but whatever.
Yeah, and you could do it at any time.
Right.
And now if you use an item, it costs you an ATB bar,
How did
which
you
I
feel
remember.
about that?
I think it's a good change.
Initially, I didn't like it because I was just like, dude, like I want to use a potion and I can't. Like I feel like it should have been like a half a
Mhm.
ATB bar. But once I played it again, I was like, no, this adds a lot of depth to it. Like I'm glad. Like there's a cost to doing this.
Right. Yeah, because that means if you're not playing good enough on defense, right,
Hmm.
you can like you're taking damage or more damage than you would be. So you have to use a potion, which costs you an ATB bar, which is like a resource you otherwise could have done used to do like very high damage to the enemy, right? Because the attacks like Braver and Focus Thrust and Cloud's Fire spell, those are like as strong as his full chain combo, if not even stronger, depending on if the enemy is staggered or whatever,
Right.
right?
Right.
His chain combo does like I think like 200 damage or something to like a regular grunt. Like if you land all 5 hits, and then Braver does like 300 damage, right?
Right.
So if you're having to use a lot of potions and heal a lot, which I think is maybe what makes the battle seem like very long for people, is they're kind of playing offense all the time and then they have to heal,
Right.
like the Scorpion boss for a lot of people feels very tanky, and I think it's because you're having to use a lot of potions and then you're having to build your ATB back up just to do significant damage.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a trade-off. Like like in FF15 you have the far extreme where you can just mash the attack button and really just like if anything goes wrong it's like, well, just pop a high potion or whatever, and then just keep going. But in
Right.
this game it's like if you are having to do that all the time, then the battles are going to drag out longer, right? Because your abilities that do all this massive damage are tied to that same resource, that ATB bar.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think I think the first time I played it, the ATB bar was a little jaunting for me to get used to because I felt like I was playing an action game and I felt like I was being blocked, and I
yeah,
didn't really know how to feel about it. But after having played it again a few times, like man, that ATB bar is just like the reason why I switch characters, you know,
yes,
because
um,
I would need to heal, right? Like you said, like especially the first time you're playing it and you're trying to be on the offense all the time and then you're trying to heal again, you know, I would need to heal and Cloud would have no ATB bars left, right?
yeah,
Then
hmm
Barrett's sitting over there with 2 bars. Or, I would need Barrett's materia and or Barrett would be out of materia, but Cloud would have MP, right? So it was just like I don't know, like it really felt like I was controlling like the whole party, even if it was only 2 people. And I'm kind of interested to see how this is going to play out with just more than 2 people. But like, I can't believe like they actually nailed it. I've always had such a problem with action oriented combat
hmm
that try to have like a party structure. It works pretty good in MMOs, but obviously that's because you have your own party, everyone's controlling the characters or whatever. And plus,
hmm
it's still pretty turn based, kind of. But like an actual action RPG, once you have like a party, a lot of times it just doesn't work. I've talked about this before, but characters are just spamming their magic and using all their MP. They're spamming your items. They're not doing what they need to do. They won't go on the defense when they need to go on the defense. They're being counterproductive to the boss battle.
mm,
And in this, I didn't like it. I really felt like it was very appropriate. Like Barrett was helping me, but he wasn't just blowing off lightning like left and right, like for no apparent reason, and he wasn't just throwing potions left and right. So I'm like,
that's a good point. Yeah, because all the consumable items and MP that you have are tied to that ATB bar. and only the player can tell a character when to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't have to balance like the AI, right, with like um, use potions until we only have 10 left or whatever, like they can literally just leave it all up to the player, so because that's a problem in games like Tales of games. You tell the characters to like use items. There's like an AI settings usually that you can do that says like don't heal, use magic only, or like use magic and items.
It's
And then
like,
if you select use magic and items, they like even if they're like at more than half health, they're like popping in your apple gels or whatever, and like use them all up.
it's just like, stop.
Yeah.
I'm not rich.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
kind of avoid that problem, right?
Yeah.
By tying everything to that bar, and then only the player can decide how to use the bar.
Yeah. It's like they went in the opposite direction, right? For
Hmm.
like a 15, 20 years, they've been like, people have been trying to like automate combat and like have, the gambit system or whatever whatever you want to call it, whatever that game intends to call just controlling the AI, the other character. And
Hmm.
in Final Fantasy VII Remake, they're just like, no, you're gonna have to choose. Like, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to control every party member. They'll do basic attacks.
Hmm.
They'll do what they're supposed to do, but you're not gonna just sit there and let them do everything. So I really like that. Uh, how did you feel about the difficulty in the boss battle? Did you feel that it was? Does this make you feel more excited for the game? Did you think it was an easy fight? Like, what did you think?
It was pretty challenging the first time that I played because I just think there's nothing prior to that that is of a similar challenge. That's like the first like test, which I really like actually because I always think that's a good game design is if you have like a bunch of little challenges beforehand, right? That kind of show you what your characters can do. Like you said, like those little um, pop-ups, they give you like the scripted tutorial, like
Right.
like try out Punisher mode or whatever, and then like Barrett joined you. He can shoot the enemies from far away, and then like each kind of phase of this Scorpion boss battle kind of tests all those things they told you, right? Like, are you making good use of Barrett like shooting the enemy while he's up on the wall, right? Um,
Dude,
are
I
you blocking the boss's attacks? Um, are you trying to use Punisher mode to counter any of his like physical moves or whatever? So there's like a lot going on, and I agree with Eric because he had only played it the first time, and then he came on here to give us his thoughts, and he was like, it felt pretty chaotic, like it
yeah.
was overwhelming, and I
Yeah.
think it was the first time I played it. I played it several more times afterwards, and I could kind of see more of the depth and like the strategy. Because one thing I noticed is at the start of every battle, well, Barrett has his overcharge ability,
Yeah,
right?
where he like bangs it on the ground. Right.
Yeah, but like if it's fully charged, he shoots out like a bunch of shots, and he finishes with a shot that's like really strong. Like I don't remember. It's like 4 to 5 shots. Like he shoots in rapid succession, and they do like 20 damage or so. But the last hit does like 150 damage almost. I think,
Yeah, it's pretty
which is
beastly.
like, yeah, it's stronger than his focused shot ability.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, I was like, I should probably be using that as much as I can, right?
Right.
Because it's just a high damage move. And then I realized, oh, it's fully charged at the start of every battle, no matter where it was, no matter how far it was charged up, like at the end of the previous battle. It's just you start with one. And then I thought, well, why don't I just use it at the start of the battle, every battle? And then I went into the menu and I found you can change the leader from Cloud to Barrett so that you start the battle as Barrett. And then I played through the demo as soon as I got Barrett. I did that, and yeah, like you unleash overcharge, and it either outright kills or like does a ton of damage to one of the enemies. and it is enough to build up a full ATB bar at the very beginning, and then you can go from there. You can use lightning or do whatever you want, you know.
Yeah, but,
So
like
it's like I was thinking like with Cloud you have to kind of unleash a full string of attacks before you get your ATB bar, but
right.
with Barrett you can get one almost instantly. And I was like, how does that kind of change the strategy? So I was playing around with that a little bit, but like I can already see like there's going to be different ways of playing the game, which I think is very encouraging.
Yeah, I know some people were a little apprehensive when they saw that Final Fantasy VII Remake was going to be using a stagger function, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
for Final Fantasy 13 and
Very divisive.
the last part of the game, second half, the gameplay gets quite good, but a lot of people felt like in the first half, the only way to defeat an enemy was to stagger. It was the
Yep.
same way every battle, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so people were a little apprehensive about 7 Remake also having a stagger meter in it. But I think like you said, like there's so many different ways to approach an enemy, especially
Mm-hmm.
that scorpion boss fight. Like not only were there different ways to approach that enemy, but the enemy was doing different things
Yeah.
throughout the fight. I mean, at one point it was like picking up Barrett and you had to like get it to drop them. I mean, then you were like ducking behind the debris. It was crawling on the walls, and then at that point, only Barrett could attack it. Like it was just really exciting. I loved the fact that during that scorpion fight, I wasn't using magic like Cloud said to do,
Mm-hmm.
and Cloud was like, "I thought I told you to use magic," and Barrett was like, "I thought you were full of shit."
Yeah. That was great.
I was just like, I just laughed. Like that was so funny. Um,
And then like you said, he can grab the characters. When I was playing it, the Scorpion boss, he grabbed Cloud, right? And Cloud just kind of he kind of struggles on his own. And he just kind of like makes it like a grunt. He's like, like
yeah.
trying to get out of there. And Barrett is like, what does he say? He says, "Is that your way of asking for help?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
I don't know. I'm really positive about the gameplay. Did you have any other positive things you want to bring up if before we get into any like little nitpicks with it that we want to talk about before we get into the story?
Um, I think I touched on the big thing, which for me is like it feels more balanced. Like
Yeah.
like I said, like you have this resource, the ATB bar, and you have to choose how you're gonna if you're gonna use it offensively or defensively. If you're having to use it defensively a lot, you're sacrificing a lot of damage, but that probably means you aren't playing the little action portion, the actual action portion of the game very efficiently
Mm,
or not carefully enough, right?
right.
So it is kind of like it's not punishing you in the fact that like it's not like a hard pass fail type of thing. It's like how best to put it, like a resource management type of game. It feels like, right? You're like playing an action game, but there's like this resource management aspect to it where the vast majority of your damage comes from this ATB bar, but you don't have access to it if you're not playing the game efficiently, basically.
See, that's the thing where like I've seen people talk about the demo and usually it's pretty overwhelming praise, but they'll say, Square likes to act like this is a blend between ATB, like a traditional ATB system or a weight system,
Mm-hmm.
really, I think is what they're getting at, or turn-based system. And an action combat system, and they're like, no, like that's just marketing speak. Like this is a total action combat system. And I'm like, like yeah, I see where they're coming from. It definitely is, but like the core of the battle system functions very similarly to the original system where you had to it was a series of waiting until you were able to move, right, and until
Yeah.
then trying to stay alive.
Yeah. So instead of just waiting, right, until it's your turn,
Hmm.
you're playing this little action mini game that determines um, how you kind of get to use your turn, I guess, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're playing this little game where you choose like, okay, do I dodge roll, do I block, or do I attack? And if you attack too much, well, then when it's your turn, right, you have to heal, right, because you were just attacking all the time and you never chose to defend. or if you are just always dodging, right? Well, then it's going to take a lot longer for your turn to come, right? But
Yeah.
the balance of it is, well, you probably didn't take much damage then if you were dodging all the time. So by the time it is your turn, you can do something cool. Like,
Well, not only
so it's
that,
kind of like a tug of war type of thing.
too, like the adrenaline pumping also happens because I remember at one point in the Scorpion fight on one of my playthroughs, Cloud got down to like 80 HP, right? So
Mm,
at 80 HP in that fight, like if you get, you're probably not going to survive like one onslaught of anything, right?
yeah.
So, but I didn't have any, like both my characters, no ATB bars. And I knew if I switched to Barrett, like Cloud was just going to go get himself killed. Okay. So I was like, I need an ATB bar now so I can heal. And I had two options. I could sit there and try to defend, but I knew that was probably going to get me killed. I only had 80 HP. And even
Hmm.
blocking, it was still like 12 HP every time. So I was like, I had one option at that point. Like just go in and start like frantically attacking, like like trying to
Yeah.
dodge and attack until I got my bar up. And then I like ran into a corner and like healed myself. So like it's just I don't know, man. It's just it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it. Um, I would say that if I had to bring up a negative, this is going to be a weird negative, but the first time I played it, I thought it was a little strange that Cloud could not jump.
That there was no like
Jump.
designated jump button.
Yeah, because I mean, like with all these acrobatics, like I felt like unusually strapped to the ground. Whereas in
Mm,
like 15, you could jump and you could warp up to high spots and you could warp across the room and stuff. But you know, now I've played it a few times. I've gotten used to it. But
yeah.
I do feel like, come on, Square, just put a jump button in there.
I wonder if they did that first because it'll be easier to like just make the environments. Like
Right.
it's probably going to be more of a hallway slash kind of hallway arena followed by another hallway and arena,
Yeah, there's
like type of
probably
game.
not platforming elements or an aspect
Yeah.
where you would need to use the jump button other than to
So
satisfy me.
yeah, if you have a jump button, a lot of times in games like that, you have to put a bunch of invisible walls in places, right? Because you don't actually want the player to be able to jump up to this platform it looks like they might be able to jump up to, right?
Right.
But you at the same time you want the environment to look a certain way, like realistic, right?
I guess
If because
there's less opportunity for things breaking too, right?
yeah, like he comes off on the train, right? And he leaps down at the very beginning. Well, if there was a jump button, how many people would be trying to jump up back on top of the train, and how awkward would it look? You know, like they may just not want the game to look or feel that way. You know, and
Yeah,
then it's what do? It's like, well, do you actually design it so that the player can jump up on the train and find like a potion or something up there, or do you just the simpler solution, right? Is to just make them grounded, like you said.
yeah. It was just a small nitpick. It felt weird
Yeah.
to me at first, but I got used to it. Um, what do you have? You have anything negative or
Yeah.
nitpicky?
There's a few sections in the game where the camera was an issue for me. In particular, right where you they introduce Barrett
Okay.
and you have to like look almost straight up
Mm,
and shoot the enemies that are up there. But the camera is like has Barrett kind of on the screen at all times, so that when you're trying to look up and shoot the enemy, and I was like kind of the camera was kind of backing into the wall a little bit.
yeah.
So that was an issue in a few places. I don't know what they can do about that other than just make the rooms wider so that you don't bump into the wall as much. And then another little nitpick was breaking the boxes with Cloud.
The boxes wouldn't
Um,
break.
well, you break them, but if you don't slash them all in one hit, like he has to kind of put the sword back a little bit, like
Mm,
animation,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
do it again because
yeah.
it's like only one animation for him to slash the boxes. So now that I got used to that, I kind of try to position myself like in the very center of the boxes so I can hit them all with one swipe. But I don't think it would be too hard to like just he can slash and then just kind of leave the sword at his side and you can walk around that way, and then
Instead of
like
putting it
slash
back.
whatever boxes are still there, and then he can put it back, like, because it's kind of awkward looking, like he slashes and then he has to like put his sword back, and then he's like, oh no, there's another one, and he has to slash it again.
Oh, let me put it back. Yeah.
More Shinra boxes to destroy. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's the
but
thing.
that is like a nitpick. That's not like
Ruin the
how much
game.
time in the game do you actually spend slashing the boxes, you know?
And you get used to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard people say that this is not quite the same demo that they played earlier at some point, right? That the demo they played was a little bit different. They had a little bit more. The completionist actually said there was additional story in the demo that he played in the sequence. Like,
Mm.
when Cloud has a little flash, like it would actually show a little cutscene. He's the only person I've seen say that. I'm sure he's not making that up. But that just got me wondering, this demo's been sitting in the store since December, and the game's coming out in April. It's like 5 months. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure they've updated it maybe, but I just wonder, if there's small little tweaks like that they've made since then.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how long this demo has been as it
Just
is.
sitting on a server somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they could have easily been touching that stuff up till the very end.
Yeah. I heard that apparently in the E3 demo
Mm-hmm.
that and I don't know if this is true. I remember hearing this somewhere that in the demo they played at E3, the characters didn't have their abilities on the triangle button. Like
Hmm.
the Cloud did not have Punisher mode, and Barrett did not have Overcharge.
So they
And
made
that,
that change. That's a
yeah,
big deal.
but the demo back then was even more limited in that it was just you start right at the bottom of the reactor. I think you fight two enemy groups and then the Scorpion robot. Right, that's it. And then the demo's over because they had to get people through that line, like waiting to play the demo at E3. So they couldn't have an hour-long demo. you know.
Right, right.
So like they've definitely been tweaking it like leading up to the release.
I just
So
wonder if, because I really enjoyed the difficulty of the game, if there's any criticism for Final Fantasy games, is that, I've played them so much that I usually don't have a hard time with a new one.
they get too easy. Yeah.
Well, because I know the gaming loop, right? I've done it before.
Yeah,
So,
you very quickly identify like, okay, who's the healer character, right? Okay,
right.
who's the damage dealing character? What moves do the most damage? And then just kind of repeat.
It's like, yeah, it's like, okay, here's a new shop. Let me upgrade everything, you know?
Yep.
So, um, having this difficulty, and again, I know it's not a Dark Souls experience. I didn't die the first time, but there were a few times where it came close. But,
Hmm.
just having that difficulty there, I really liked it. And I hope it's not just there for the remake, or excuse me, for the demo. I hope that it's a common trend throughout the entire game, that it has that challenge there. Because, I mean, just having that experience alone is a new way to experience the game. I mean, people are modding the original right now to try to make the original more difficult because they've played the original so many times. They want a
Yeah.
new experience. So
Hmm.
being able to play the same bosses, but like just have that added challenge was really refreshing. So I'm hoping they didn't just amp up the difficulty for the demo just to, keep people playing it for the next month.
Oh, I hope not. That well, we'll never know until we won't know until the game comes out. But I
Yeah.
don't think they would change it too drastically. If anything, you would want your demo to be a little bit easier than the final game, right? Because you're trying to sell people on it. So like you don't
Well,
want people to lose, right? And then be like, "Oh, this game's not for me." You'd want it to be a little bit on the easier side so they can beat it and then, feel like a badass and be like, "Oh yeah, I like this game."
yeah, but it's a real sweet spot too, because they don't want it so easy where people are just like, that
Yeah,
battle system's trash. Because,
right.
I mean, certain battle systems, they require that difficulty for it to shine. I mean, Final Fantasy XII's battle system, you need a difficult boss fight for that battle system to shine.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just the characters just like playing the game by itself, right?
Right.
So, I think there's a little balance there. And also, I wonder if because there has been this general message online that some people have said the game was hard, that Square might be like, well, let's tweak it a little bit and make it a little easier when the game comes out. Let's patch it. But I'm hoping they don't do that. It'd be really cool if they can give it additional mode like veteran mode or something like that, or soldier first class.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe that'll unlock when you beat the game,
I
so that
don't
you can
like when
go
they
through
do
it a
that.
second time.
Yeah.
A lot of RPGs, like I know like Trails of Cold Steel. I didn't do it, but it has like a easy, normal, hard, and then a nightmare difficulty. And the nightmare difficulty is like you better have beaten this game, and this is your new game plus run, right? Because it's like the enemies are going to be super super tough. Like they're designed so that you're going into the new game like already high level and with like already all kinds of gear and stuff.
Right.
So maybe they could do something like that, so you don't feel like you lost all your progress. Make like a noob game plus difficulty.
Yeah. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be down for it. You want to move on to the story?
Sure.
So I am mostly pretty positive about the story. I do have a question, I think, to say about one element, and we are going to bring up also the image going around of Jesse's optional dialogue, and kind of get into her optional dialogue from the original, and because there's seems to be a significant plot change in this demo. We don't have to start off with that, but just to look forward to in this conversation. But I, for the most part, there's a few moments where I was kind of like, I wouldn't have done it quite like that. But for the most part, I really liked it. I mean, like I talked about the tutorial pacing and that like it was just really well paced for tutorial purposes, where it was just a short little screen and then you get to try it. Short little screen, you get to try it. The story pacing like followed a similar uh, route where it was just constantly just like something was happening where,
Hmm.
you would do a short story sequence, right? A very to the point, not excessive. And then you would do like 1 to 2 battles and then there would be more plot development. And like, I think that was just perfect for this demo because, it just kept things feeling exciting. And a lot of times, like, to the fault of, again, Final Fantasy 13, I mean, it had really long cutscenes a lot of times. Kingdom Hearts 3 did as well, where it'd just
Hmm.
be this like excessively long cutscene and like not much actually happened in some of them. Some of them were actually quite good. But I know that was a really common complaint where it was just like, okay, I had a cutscene, I walked out the door, and then
I'm
now there's
watching them.
another cutscene, right? And all they
Yeah.
really talked about was like the wind on their skin, like right, like it's like how is this moving the plot forward? I felt like this was just really well, just concise to the point, and just constantly like every moment something new was happening. I don't know if the whole game can keep up that momentum, but I'm sure we'll get to a point where things kind of calm down for a little bit and you get to explore the city. But I mean, the reason that stood out to me is that this doesn't seem like a game that was kind of half-assed, right? Like
Oh, definitely not.
when
Yeah.
yeah, like Final Fantasy 15, things I like about Final Fantasy 15, talk about that endlessly, but there were moments in that game where I was just like, this was meant to be more, and it
Hmm.
was not. With Jared and avenging his death and everything like that. So this seemed to me like they're putting a lot more emphasis on things they have been ignoring lately. So that's one positive I have to say about it. I got some others, but um, I'll go ahead and let you give your spiel here for a little bit.
Um, yeah. Biggest story positive for me is that it's following the main story of the original game. At least the plot is intact for the most part. There was one exception, right? But
Possible exception.
yeah, it's
We'll determine that tonight.
yeah, like for me, I feel they got the characters right. Um, again, with one exception, which I'll mention later. But like for the most part, like yeah, these feel like the characters. At least for me, it feels like how they would sound, right? Like if I could somehow patch voice acting into the original game, like it's how I imagined they sounded in my head.
Sure.
Um, Even Barrett, who I know some people are like he's way too over the top, right,
Like
in certain scenes.
me.
Yeah, but for me, like that's kind of how I imagined him. You know, like in the sprite form, right, on the PS1. Like
Hmm.
I always imagine him, you know, like he has like this animation where he's like beating his chest or he's like shaking his shaking his fist to show that he's angry. Well, now with like full 3D and voice acting, they can like really um, portray that. I guess you know they don't have to portray it so comically, right? They're
Right.
not they're not as limited. So and same thing for Cloud. Um, they got his real douchebaggery. I don't care about the planet attitude going pretty well. You know, so yeah, biggest positives for me, I would say, is the characters, and
Authenticity.
yeah, they line up pretty well with what I imagined the characters would sound like, and also the dialogue banter, like we mentioned earlier, um, for the most part, is really good. Some of the like after combat stuff seems a little like it will get a little too repetitive, kind of similar to Final Fantasy 15, especially if you're somewhere fighting a lot of enemies over and over, because they can only voice so many lines, right?
Right.
So, because like I've already heard some repeats, like playing the demo more than once, right? Like you kill a bunch of enemies, and Barrett is like, "Oh yeah, that was something, wasn't it?" And then Cloud is like, "Nah, that was nothing," you know, just like you hear those little quips like
Right.
over and over, and it can
Right.
get tiresome. But I was really happy that when you're fighting the Scorpion boss fight, it seems like there's um, dialogue that's contextual, that you're only going to hear it
Mm,
during that battle for the
yeah.
most
Yeah.
part.
Makes it
You
a
know,
little bit
like
more immersive.
yeah, like Barrett says, like I'm not dying to some goddamn scorpion or something. You know, it's like, well, he's not going to say that when you're fighting something that's not a scorpion robot. You know, like, and then yeah, like that kind of dialogue banter reminds me of the Uncharted games, which I like
Okay. Yeah.
because they kind of have that lighthearted, actiony, like set piece actiony type of feel to them.
That's a
Where like,
compliment, by the way.
yeah, where like um, Drake will be like popping out of cover, like shooting guys or whatever, and then all of a sudden, like the enemy will like burst through a wall with a jeep, and like all of a sudden he's under like heavy machine gun fire or something, and he'll make quips like, "Oh great," or you know like, "Oh of course," like now they have a rocket launcher or something. You know, like he'll just say it out loud. You know, like that's kind of
Right.
what it reminded me of, as like Cloud and Barrett were like commenting on the very contextual things that were happening on the screen.
To just kind of
So
branch off that, I also, and I totally agree with you, but one other thing that I noticed that I thought was really well done is some of the side comments, a lot of times were, and you know, they did this in 15 as well, but they were in relation just to the environment, not necessarily the battle. And some of it was some really good stuff. For example, when they first get into the reactor, right? There was some excellent world building where the dialogue felt really natural because Barrett says to Cloud something along the lines of like, "Man, what if you fell into the Mako?
oh
You
yeah,
think you'd fall to the center of the planet?" And Cloud responds, "No, the pump would suck you up." Right? Like, I'm like, dude, that's like a very natural like thing. Like, oh my god, I'm looking at this. It's like an ocean or whatever. What if I
hmm
fell in there? And then Clouds just naturally responds, "The pump would suck you up." That feels very natural to tell the player what the Mako reactor is doing, right? It's sucking the Mako up out of the planet, and it's not like you know Barrett's like, "Hey, what does this thing do?" And Cloud's like,
right.
"Well, you see, it sucks the Mako out of the reactor," and it's like they're sitting in a reactor, right? Like that would be dumb. So
It would, yeah.
so like I felt like there was moments like that that were really well done. And then also later after you beat the scorpion fight or the scorpion boss, there's some awesome body language, which is something the original really excelled at in a dramatic way, right? Because the characters would have to be excessively exaggerated because they couldn't show facial expressions or anything like that. So, um, but there's this scene after the scorpion fight where Cloud and Barrett are in the elevator, and the elevator's going up or down or whatever. I think it's going up, and Barrett's like, "Come on, come on, come on, come on!" Like he's like hoping the door's going to open, and he's like freaking out, right? And then
Yeah.
the camera pans to Cloud, and he's just sitting there with his arms crossed, with his eyes closed. And I'm like, dude, that's such a good way to just show Cloud's character
Hmm.
without like, like overemphasizing it. Because I'm thinking, I actually kind of like 13, but I'm thinking of Snow in the beginning, right? Where he's just like, I'm a hero. And like, right?
Yes.
And it's just
Very
like, come
on the
on,
nose.
guys, I'm a hero. And it
Yeah.
like drives everyone nuts. I'm like, this is just like Cloud not saying anything. He's just arms crossed, eyes closed, just like the whole the freaking reactor's about to blow up, and he's just like the elevator's like shaking and he's just calm. No
Hmm.
worries. Like it just showed like, okay, like I'm experienced, right? So I thought that was a really, really nice touch as well that I really, really liked.
Yeah. And in that moment, Barrett kind of he looks down and he like kind of unclenches his fist. I think he realizes like he's got to be more collected, right?
Right.
Like Cloud is, because he like you said, he's kind of freaking out, like hoping the elevator is going to get them up. But then he looks back and he sees that Cloud is like, cool as a cucumber or whatever. And then he looks and he's got his fist clenched, and then he kind of like he opens his fist, and like you said, with no dialogue, they're able to kind of convey a lot in
Yeah.
that scene. So that was definitely a good moment.
Yeah. I think that for me, this is a positive, anyways. Also, I genuinely liked the Avalanche members. I liked them. I
Yeah.
think they're going to be, I can't wait to get to know them more. I'm excited about that. Initially, when I found out the game was only in Midgar and they were going to expand on the Avalanche crew, I was like, okay, but like, they were in the first couple hours of the game. Like I wasn't that excited about it, but like now seeing them and seeing them a little bit more fleshed out here, I I, I kind of liked them. I'm excited to spend more time with them. I think it's kind of silly that they all still wear the red headband, you know. Like
Easily point them out. Yeah.
yeah, well yeah, and it's just kind of a nice, you know, just touch to the past, right? They didn't change that, even though it was kind of silly.
Hmm.
So I really, really like that too. So, um, regarding the story, I mean, it's a 40-minute demo. So, I feel like we should be talking about the story for like 4 hours, but it's a 40-minute demo. Was there, anything else with the story that kind of stood out for you? Because I do have one or two nitpicks with the story, but I don't want to just jump into that if we still got some more stuff to crack open here.
Hmm. Well, I think that does it for me for positives. I
I,
have a few negatives, but
I would say one other thing I forgot that I'll mention here. I think I brought it up earlier when I was talking about the gameplay, but I really liked how they worked the the fact that Cloud's a mercenary, he was hired to fight the soldiers, right? And so like that gave a lot of context to why they were just leaving him to like
hmm.
fight everything while they went on to do everything. And that really gave us a good reason to spend time with Cloud alone for the tutorial, learn his combat, and it just felt like the story and the gameplay was not quite in conflict like it is in some games. Like it really felt like it meshed well. And Barrett didn't join the party until it was relevant, right? When we needed that ranged weapon, or
Yeah,
we needed some extra firepower. So I really feel like there was a good tie between the two that felt really appropriate.
that's true. Yeah.
Um,
Um, there is one thing I just remembered.
okay.
There's a part where the Avalanche members hack a door, and Cloud goes through first, and the door closes behind him.
Barrett's like,
And you have
wait.
yeah, you have to fight four guys there, and they say like give it up or something, or like this is the end of the line, and then Cloud like very calmly walks to the middle of the room and he pulls out his sword and he says, "That's my line." And like it's very cheesy, but like
But they turned the volume up on the music and like,
yeah, yeah, but it works in that like somebody trying to be cool, like kind of how Cloud is, right? Like he's playing the part,
right,
right? They would hear that and think like, yeah, this is what like a cool person would say, like in
right.
this scene, right? But actually, it comes off as like pretty cheesy. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know
so
if that was intentional or not, or I don't know how Nojima writes his stuff. Maybe he wrote that and he was like, yeah, that's cool. But like to me, it felt like 90s action movie star type of line, you know, like
I,
something like Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, like in the right before a big fight scene or something.
yeah, I really I love how they just like casually turn up the music too. Like it's like all bombastic and stuff. Like it was just
Yeah.
like an action flick.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like I felt like it was appropriate for the moment, like and true to the character.
Yeah.
I guess it'd be different if he was constantly like that. He might be. I mean, this is a demo, right? But from
That's true.
what we saw, like he has his little moments, but he's not, every scene. Well, I guess he's kind of short tempered every scene, but he's not constantly like, I'm here to save the day. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's
It's here and there. Like he has like little quip, like that's my line, or like at the end he does like a super front flip, like kind of um I don't know if you've seen The Hobbit where Legolas like
oh okay. I was
runs up
I
the
was try-
falling debris.
I was trying to figure out where you were going with this for a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. No, like yeah, like he the bridge he's standing on collapses and he's able to
Yeah.
like leap up on the falling debris even though it's that shouldn't work. you know, and then like Jesse is like, "Oh, you're so cool." And he has like a smirk on his face. Like he has his moments like that, kind of his action 90s uh, star kind of moments, I guess. But like you said, it's not all the time.
Yeah.
It's not overbearing.
Yeah, it's true to the character, but it's not, and he is kind of cool to be honest. Like,
Hmm.
so you kind of roll with it. Um, I think there was a few things that like a few tiny things I wanted to bring up that weren't story based, but were just things I noticed that I forgot to mention. Um, Graphically, like on the PS4 Pro, this thing looks freaking amazing. I mean, the lighting effects were just like, dude, this is a PS4 late gen game. I mean,
Hmm.
like a lot of games have lighting effects, but it's like this weird effect where you're in a room, there's no light source, but there apparently is a light source that's like because the room's lit up, and in this game, like, no, I could point to the light source in the game. Like there'd be a floodlight or something like that. And like it would be appropriately hitting the character and there'd be shadow. And there was different types of light too, depending on what was happening. You would have fire or just different temperature in the light from either from a computer monitor or like I said before, a really bright floodlight. I feel like it really just like it made it feel like this was like a you know, a current top notch game. It looked really good, and there was a lot of attention to detail too, with just the stuff around the environment. Like it felt very real to me because you look on the ground and there's little scratches in the ground, but it's in a pattern like somebody's been dragging a pallet, right?
Mm.
And it like
Wow.
and like there's little scratches going through the lines in the paint and stuff like that, and it's very haphazardly, but it looks like somebody's been dragging something, or there's just tools lying around and stuff like that, and it just felt like this is a place that's been used, and I really just dug it. Like I was just like, this is the attention to detail that I like. A lot of times with current gen games, they're almost too clean looking, and this had a little grittiness to it. Um, so I felt like that was really, really cool.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know if I have much to add.
Yeah.
Um, the lighting effects, there is, I messed around with it a little bit. The train that comes in at the very beginning,
Hmm.
there's like two red lights, um, kind of on the side, like where the train stops. And I noticed a lot the lighting, like kind of how it reflects off of Cloud's sword, like as he kind of does his stride, right? And it kind of flashes sometimes. And I was wondering, like, is that due to the actual lighting in the engine, like shining down on his sword, depending on how close he is to like a light or the angle or whatever? And sure enough, I was able to kind of angle his back towards those red lights on the train, and like the red light is shining
His
right
sword.
off his sword. Yeah, so
Dude, this game is going to look so awesome on the PS5. Like
yeah,
that
where they take
version.
it to the next level.
Yeah, like it's just going to be insane. But there was also like a small last little thing here. Um in one of the areas there's this like little paper like rug type thing that's on the ground, and it's only big enough for Cloud to take like two steps on it. And like when I walked across it, they like it changed to like the sound effect of him running on paper. And I know that's not uncommon for games, right? But if it
Mhm.
was me designing this, I would have been like, we're not going to have a paper mat here. We're just going to keep doing cement.
Make
Cause
it easier.
yeah,
Yeah.
cause I don't want to have to go through it's like two steps, right? But it looked appropriate for the moment. Like it looked like it fit there, and it was there. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like I just that takes me back to that, Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1 approach, that just having very messy environments with like lots of crap just laying around, and it makes it feel like you're just like in the world. Whereas, once we got to the PS2 and definitely PS3 era, like it looked really like realistic. Things started to look much more realistic, but it also looked like, somebody's been sweeping the ground every day. Everything's
Right.
perfectly polished. There's not a single weed growing out of the ground. Like it's just everything's perfect. The lawn's always mowed perfectly. Like it's just it's not real. It's not real. And this seems like they're paying attention to those little details again, which is really really cool.
Yeah. Um,
But
I did notice. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't think I have anything more positive to say.
Oh,
I don't know. I
yeah.
probably could think of more. Go ahead.
In terms of details, I also noticed, when you leave the train station and you get up to it's the part where Jesse and Biggs have their back and forth about who's this Cloud guy, right, helping us. Um, if you walk around like that wall, there's like a gate they're trying to hack, but there's a wall kind of in front, and it has like some Shinra propaganda and stuff on there. There's like graffiti, right? Like somebody's tagged the walls, but then you can clearly see like somebody has like been trying to scrub it off, like clean it up, but
Dude, I
they didn't
totally
get all
missed
of it.
that.
Yeah, you can see it. It's like there's no graffiti anywhere else. It's specifically like on the wall, like that is guarding the reactor, like preventing other people from getting towards the reactor.
And it looks like somebody's been trying to scrub it off, but it's still like kind of faintly there.
Yeah, because you can't really make out the words very well, like what it says. So, but it's like certain pieces of the letter have been scraped off. So it's almost like somebody tagged it like very recently, and then like somebody went to go clean it up, but they didn't finish. They went home for the day or whatever. So
That's awesome, dude. I mean, dude,
yeah.
there's just that attention to detail that I totally dig. I th- I dude, I think this is going to be the best Final Fantasy game in a very
On the
long time
PS4.
on PS4. Yeah, a single player Final Fantasy game in a very long time. Granted, I did think the same thing about 15 before it
Mhm.
came out. I was like, dude, this game looks amazing.
True.
And I was severely disappointed. But this, they have a framework for a story, so I know the story can't completely suck, even if they're changing stuff. Like they have to, they got the rails, and they kind of have to stay on it a little
Hmm.
bit. You know, it's got to hit the key parts, and also I play the combat, and the combat's good. So it's I think it's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, things
Um,
looking good so far.
yeah. Negatives with the story. I got two things, and then we'll also talk about the Jesse dialogue. Um, I don't want to say for me, it's not really negatives. It's more like lukewarm.
Hmm.
I'm kind of like, I don't know how to feel about it. I feel like I need to play it more. But do you want to start us off, and then I'll kind of tag on when I feel appropriate?
Sure. Um, so a minor thing first. Um, the bomb that you plant at the bottom. Um, you can choose 30 minutes or 20 minutes, right? For and depending on what you pick, you get different dialogue from Barrett. Like if you choose 20 minutes, he's like, "Oh, you're pretty cocky, aren't you?" And but then if you choose 30 minutes, he's like, "That enough time for you?" You know.
Hmm.
But that's cool. Like I like that aspect. Um, but the negative is I don't understand how it started. Did that seem weird to you? Like you fight the boss, right? You
Hmm.
defeat the scorpion robot, and then a bunch of debris falls on it, and like it just starts. Like again, this is not a huge thing. It's just like it
So,
was weird to me. I don't understand how the bomb actually got started. I didn't see any like
oh, okay, I'm
piece
following
of
you.
debris like specifically fall on the button because Cloud was about to push a button to start the bomb, the timer, and then they get interrupted. The scorpion robot comes and you have to fight it.
Maybe Cloud's a Jedi.
Yeah, it's just like pushed it somehow.
Yeah.
And then so that's a minor thing. The other minor thing is regarding the timer. As you're going up to the like you're trying to escape.
Hmm.
Maybe this is just because it's a demo and they don't want people to die, but the timer stops when there's a cutscene, like on the top of the screen.
See, I
Like
didn't
it doesn't.
notice that, but I felt like I chose 20 minutes and there was like no problem.
Yeah, so like when the debris kind of catches and like you see like Jessie her leg gets pinned down by by a piece of cement, and then you got to get over there. That whole time when that like cutscene is playing out, the timer is stopped. And then also you get to the top with Barrett, and Barrett is like, "Go on ahead of us, Jesse." Like Cloud and I'll fight him off. That little cutscene, the timer's not moving, and I was like,
Hmm.
"Why not just? You already gave people like a lot of time
Just let
to
it
get
keep
out.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, like just let it keep going. Maybe they will in the final version of the game,
Well, I feel like even
but
if they do let it keep playing, I will still have lots of time. you know?
yeah,
So, so if
either
it,
that or
they could have a 10-minute option. That would be intense.
yeah, or like we're saying, if there's a hard mode, maybe just have the timer running during the Scorpion boss fight as well, because that would build a lot of attention, right? Like I got to beat this boss and get out in 20 minutes.
Right.
That would be that would get the blood pumping even more.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, those are my only two nitpicks that I have story wise. Um,
Well, you want me, you want me to dive in here? Um,
sure.
so the first time we talked about this last week with the idea that Shinra is the one that blows up the reactor,
Hmm.
I was initially kind of like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Then I was actually very positive because I was like, okay, this is setting up the fact that Shinra's willing to go to this level. You know,
Hmm.
it's making the fact that he does this later at a much bigger scale. It it provides context to his character that he's willing to do that. So it's a little bit more believable because in this realistic sense, it might be a little too crazy, right? To just start
Hmm.
off with that. If you don't have something to kind of set the foundation of it. And also I really got that they needed to kind of downplay this idea that the characters are bad people, right? Like in this day and age, you can't have your main heroes be complete full blown terrorists. They have to be, you know,
Yeah,
good-hearted terrorist, right?
I
So,
mean, I think they still could,
mhm.
but they want this game to sell. I don't know. They always want their games to sell too much, but
I
like
don't
they
think they
probably
want a
want this game.
controversy.
Yeah, they want this game to sell like whatever 20 million copies or whatever it is. So they don't want anything that the reviewers or whatever, somebody writing their article could look at and be like, is it really
Mm,
okay to portray characters like this in a post 9/11 world? They don't want that headline like
right,
out there.
right. In Final
So
Fantasy 7 Remake, you get to blow up a reactor. Looks kind of like
yeah,
the Twin Towers, you know?
yeah, like they just want to
Yeah.
steer clear of that. So I think that,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
so now I've played it a couple times. I still hold that same opinion, and I think that in the sense that I'm okay with him doing it, right? But I started to get to the point where I was struggling. There's a couple things with this, but I was struggling to understand. Um, well, let me back up here. In the original, okay, Shinra drops the plate on Sector 7 because Avalanche blew up the reactor, right? Avalanche was doing other things, but that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like Shinra's just like, you know what? Like, this is just becoming too much of a nuisance. We
Hmm.
can't find these people. We know their hideouts down here. Screw it. I'm dropping the plate. I'm just going to end this whole thing and we'll be done with Avalanche. I'll blame it on Avalanche. People will love me. Like, all's good. So I was
Right.
getting to the point with the demo where, okay, if Shinra's the one that blows up the reactor, like he blows up his own reactor. You know, I was wondering why does he drop the plate also if Avalanche wasn't that much of a nuisance, right? And so I was like, where's the motivation? Because before it was they blew up the reactor, that cost you a lot of money. The people are mad at you. Like it took a long time to build that reactor. Like this when people are unhappy, they might want a new leader. Like it's just it causes problems. But like if you blew up your own reactor and you knew it, why would you then go drop a plate on your entire like an eighth of your city? Like these people couldn't even blow up the reactor, right? However, when I played it again a third time, like there's this little cutscene where Heidgar says, "We believe this is the group that attempted to assassinate you in the past," right?
Hmm.
So I'm glad that scene's there and that's giving me a ray of hope because I'm like, okay, that's the motivation I needed to understand why he still feels like these people are a problem. Because I mean, if I tried to assassinate a world leader, I I escaped, I would be hunted down for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
if I tried to kill like Donald Trump or something, or I don't know, any world leader, like I would not be able to sleep at night calmly, you know. So like
Hmm.
that makes sense why it's personal for him, and also the fact that Avalanche, the original Avalanche, before Barrett adopted it, they were an uprising, if I remember correctly, against Shinra. So he might kind of look at this like, okay, this is festering too much. This is a problem, but I'm still in the middle on it because I'm like, I kind of feel like they should have blew up that reactor. Like that would have been the final straw that breaks the camel's back. Um, but if
Yeah.
Shinra's going to blow up the reactor and drop the plate, I'm confused why Shinra didn't blow up the reactor with them still in the facility. Like, why did he wait till they left? You know?
Oh, oh. Well,
And well, hold on. I know that people are going to say, well, he only did it after their bomb didn't work or whatever, or it kind of worked. And
mhm.
so he took the guns and started firing at the reactor to kind of finish the job. Okay, I don't know. Like, but during that Scorpion fight, there was a big laser beam that went all the way across the reactor. Like literally, you saw a cutscene where the tail laser shoots across the entire span of the wall of the reactor, and the laser goes right over the reactor. Like literally, like right over it, and like all the like walls exploding and like debris falling down and stuff, right? And like that did not explode the reactor, right? Then
Right.
Avalanche blows an explosive on the reactor, literally explodes attached to the reactor, just breaks some pipes, right? But then
Mhm.
Shinra turns the gun turrets at the reactor, and then that's the spark that like just blows it up to such an extent where we get that cutscene where like cars are like swerving on the road and stuff. I was just like, dude, if you wanted to blow this thing up, you should have blowed it up while they're still in the facility. You know, like so. I want this explained in the remake. This is a little bit of a nitpick. I can get over it because of what I said earlier that they try to assassinate him, and I could still kind of like headcanon my way into this and say like I don't know, maybe because he's attaching Avalanche to Wutai, maybe like
Hmm.
there's additional things with there, and he wants Avalanche alive and kicking. Like, but I'm gonna need that cutscene for me to get on board with this because the more I thought about this, the more I was having a hard time wrapping my mind around it. And we can get into the little dialogue that Jesse has in the original. But I I don't know. Did you have any thoughts with that before I just bring up that optional piece of dialogue?
Yeah, like there's like you said, we have to see where they go with it, right? Before we can really frame it as, at least for me, a positive or a negative. Because, I mean, like you said, it's possible he actually wants them alive, and that's why he let them escape and then blew up the reactor, right? Because he actually wants it out there that like Avalanche is on the loose, right? And we're going to bring him to justice. And presumably he wants like their whole bombing run, like the footage, like because he's like watching from a
A security
security
camera?
camera
Yeah.
wherever they are, like in the elevator, and then later on he has the camera right at the bottom of the reactor, and he can see the bomb not destroy the whole place, you know. So presumably they have all kinds of footage that they're then going to deceptively edit together and like push out there as propaganda, as like Avalanche actually did destroy the reactor, right?
So I think that's the strongest case, and that's kind
Yeah.
of where I was thinking too. But if it's a propaganda battle, they already disabled the reactor. You know how whatever percentage of the city now does not have power.
Hmm. I think
That's
it's
pretty infuriating. I mean, he could just as many people don't have power after the explosion as before the explosion.
right, but I don't think it would cause the kind of destruction to like make people actually fear for their lives against a terrorist threat, right? If it's like if you hear a story of like some kind of terrorist action, right, that cost people their lives, that's like a lot more frightening and upsetting than like somebody messed with a, I don't know, a power grid or something and people are without power.
Well, I
Like
mean, they could still phrase it like, so many people died, like they attacked, like here's footage of them shooting guns, But
yeah.
I get where you're going. Like, it's more visceral with a reactor exploding. I guess my question is, what is the end game then? Why does he feel the need to frame Avalanche? He's basically a monarch. It would be more useful to him to just destroy Avalanche because that's literally the only force that's fighting him. He doesn't need to frame them. He owns the mayor. Just kill him in the facility and be done with it.
Yeah, I would.
That's why I think it has to do must have something to do with Wutai because they brought that up in one of the trailers, like that they were tying Avalanche to Wutai
To
somehow.
Wutai, yeah. So yeah, it's like propaganda to start another war, I guess.
But I
But I
feel like
thought
they
like
already,
Wutai was soundly defeated.
yeah. So
So
this is what I'm talking about. Like I'm a little confused, but I feel like from what we've seen in trailers, there's a possibility they could go a route that would make sense.
mhm.
You know, because if you look at Shinra's goals, it's at least from the original, it's hard for me to understand because he wants a new Midgar. So I don't know why a terrorist would help that, you know, unless he was just like, I'm going to make this place so crappy
Everybody will want to move
to the
to
new
New
Midgar.
Midgar.
No terrorists are allowed, you know, but, I mean, yeah, I think there's a way they could work themselves out of it, but, I was I'm still a little confused. And even with the little nitpick on how the reactor exploded itself, just, ammunition fire after we just had all this stuff happen, with the
Right.
reactor. It was a little strange, but it didn't kill my hype for the game.
I guess
at
they knew
all.
exactly where to shoot.
Yeah. Now, there is something circling the internet right now because this is one of the big changes, first big change we've seen, and people are bringing up the fact that Jesse has this optional piece of dialogue. So let me get this up on the screen. So in the original, Jesse has this optional piece of dialogue that I'm just going to read it
Hmm.
because I'm trying to pull it up and it's pulling like Reddit up and all this other, and it's got advertisements and everything else. So in the original game, after you do the first bombing mission, Jesse says, "Oops." Then she says, "Hey, look at the news. What a blast." And it's just captioned like this. It says, "I think it was all because you think it was all because of my bomb, but all I really did was just make it like the computer told me. Oh no, I must have made a miscalculation somewhere." So this is an optional piece of dialogue that Jesse has in the original, and some people are looking at this as, see, the original like hinted that they didn't do it. Like she didn't intend to have such a large blast. It wasn't intentional. She kind of doubts whether or not it was her bomb because she's like, "You think it was just because of my bomb?" You know, all I did was really make it like the computer told me. I must have made a miscalculation. So people feel like the original, it's canon that Shinra did it. It just didn't show it. And that if you were intuitive enough, you would have put the pieces together. I think people are reinterpreting this in a very fun way and cool way, but I think people are really taking this optional dialogue for a run because when I read that dialogue, I initially thought she had never created a bomb before. And this is
Hmm.
the first time the bomb went off. And she was like, "Wow, that was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be." Right. Like when I was in the Marine Corps, right? After boot camp, you have to go through the School of Infantry training and you get to shoot all these really cool weapons. And at one point, I got to throw a grenade, right? Never threw a grenade before in my life. And I pulled that pin out, I threw it, and I hit the deck. And I have seen explosions in movies that are exaggerated for grenades a billion times over. But actually experiencing it, man, when I hit the ground, like, dude, like the ground was shaking. Like there's pieces of like debris that was like hitting my helmet and stuff. For like somebody next to me that was on the ground was like having a conversation with me. And like like there was still like dirt falling on us. Like, dude, it was like way bigger than I thought just experiencing it, right? So like when I read this, that's kind of the impression I get. Like, yeah, I've kind of heard about this, I've seen this, but I've never actually experienced it, right? Um,
Hmm.
that's the kind of route I get because the game like literally they do this in the remake too, which is kind of silly, but you set a timer on the bomb, and then you have to escape the facility, right? It's not just a timer in the game. Like you literally set the timer in the game. Like the cloud puts a timer down there, and like you know, you have to escape the facility and safety because there's a bomb, right? After the bomb, Barrett says, like, nobody's complaining about the size of the explosion. People want to know about their pay, right? And Barrett's
Hmm.
saying something like, "Oh, this will keep the planet going a little bit longer." Like later, like he's talking about the next mission is going to be even bigger. When they
Yep.
get to Tifa's bar, Tifa's not like, "What the hell, Barrett? You were just supposed to disable it. You weren't supposed to like blow up the whole facility." Like at like this is the only time you have anything that could actually be interpreted that way. And like the end of Barrett's character arc actually addresses the fact that he did this or he planned this
Hmm.
and it was a terrible thing. Right. So, and I guess in the remake, they could still do that by just saying like he thought he did it, you know, or
Yeah.
because he tried to do that, like the repercussions of that. But um, I don't know.
Well,
I just, when I see this popping up online, I'm like, you guys are it's not. I don't even see the purpose of believing this because it could still be a good change. It could still be
hmm
a very effective change. There's no reason to defend this, but I don't know. What do you think, Stan?
yeah. When I saw this, and we're replaying the game just recently, and so um, I was looking for something like this. Is there anything in there that hints that maybe Shinra, you know, that Mako Reactor 1 was an inside job, you know. But this it pops out, but you can't look at this and say for sure this means that Shinra blew up their own reactor. You know, like it is possible that you could read this and then interpret like, oh, their bomb shouldn't have caused that much destruction at all. Um, but then Jessie herself says, I must have made a miscalculation. And based on her character in the original game, she's kind of a klutz or like a screw up. Like,
Yeah, the ID
which,
thing failed too.
yeah, her ID badge failed. Like the ID cards, the fake IDs. Um, in the in the bombing mission, um, they've recontextualized it in the remake, so there's like explosions happening and debris falling down, but like you climb up the when you're escaping the reactor in the original, you have to save her because like her leg fell through like the grating or whatever. You know, she's like, oh
She's
no,
stuck. Yeah,
my leg got stuck, and she would have died, right, if you weren't there to help. So that's what I see this quote as. It's more of like, I must have made a miscalculation. So it's like further emphasizing that this character is really in over her head, basically, right? She's doing really, really dangerous things and she's doing them, but she's not like an expert, right? She's
sure.
making mistakes all over the place. That's what I see from this these quotes here. And yeah,
And
there's
it's
it's either her or
optional
Barrett who
dialogue.
says, yeah, I think Barrett says right after, like you mentioned, you like that, well the next one's going to be even bigger, right?
Right.
So
So clearly he
clearly,
wasn't shocked.
yeah, yeah, I would suspect in the remake when they come out, the dialogue is actually going to be more akin to like, I don't understand, like it should have only disabled the reactor, or like there's no way the explosion should have been that big. And they won't say we must have made a miscalculation. They'll they'll be in shock, you know.
Right.
That's what I suspect. But like,
That's the thing because the original just does such a good job with the story and
mhm,
like it gives so much screen time to Shinra and developing that character and you see them debating about the plate and dropping the plate and you know there's conversations with you know Reeves or Reeve arguing with Shinra about it and like he doesn't want it to happen. He's trying to
mhm,
give these like nonsensical reasons like, oh, I'm the head of urban development. I've put a lot of work into that sector. Like it would, you know, and stuff like
mhm.
that. So they give a lot of screen time to these moments. And I think that Reeve would have brought up in the meeting or somebody would have
Why
brought up like, we
why
just
did
blew
we
up the
frame him?
we just blew up the reactor. Why don't we just blowing up the sector or the plate isn't that much different, right?
Yeah,
It would have come up somehow. So I think that just for fun, like this is a fun way to interpret this dialogue. And it's, you know, it's kind of cool in that people are able to find dialogue where you could reinterpret it to suit the remake. I think that's really cool, but I don't think that was the original intent, at least in the game we got. It's possible they were playing with this idea and development and just didn't go roll with it,
it
you
didn't
know?
flesh it out. Yeah,
But I like for the game that we got and that we played, and like the full scale of Barrett's character arc and just you know everything going on with that. I just I don't I never got that impression. You know,
yeah, yeah. I don't think it's really necessary to like try and justify it. Like people are saying that it's
yeah, it might be a
true to the
change.
original. I mean, it's a change, but
It might
as
be
we mentioned
better.
before, yeah, it depending on what they do with it, you you are losing something. Like you're losing kind of the terrorist aspect of the main characters, right? Which is like something not very commonly seen, right? Like usually these JRPGs are a little more black and white, right, in their morality.
To be
So you are kind of losing that, but at the
sure,
same time, um, depending on what they do with it, like Barrett and Avalanche are going to see that what their bomb has done, and then their response is going to be to do it again, right? So it will be interesting to see how Barrett is going to try and justify to the team, like, yeah, like if they truly didn't expect their bomb to blow up this reactor,
That was
but it
terrible
did,
and you felt bad. Like, would you really want to do it again?
would you want to do it again? So like they have a good opportunity to show earlier on in the story that for everybody else it's about the planet, but for Barrett it's more personal, right?
What they
And it can
could
kind of hint at things to come.
what they could do is they could find out that Shinra's going to do it again, right? He's going to blow up another reactor, and then they go to stop him, you know, and during that, that's when the badges don't work and all that other stuff. But I don't know how I feel about that. I'm gonna have to see it play out. They've done a good job with what we've seen thus far, so I
Mm-hmm.
think that like it's not going to be um, a train wreck, you know. But uh, it's definitely a change, and I can understand why they did it.
Yeah,
I can understand, but
we'll have to see where they go from there. Like I'm not putting it in a positive or a negative until I see how it plays out, basically.
I put it in
But
a lukewarm.
yeah,
Take that as you may.
yeah.
So, do you have anything else you want to bring up about the story? I haven't even been checking the comments, but people might be losing their minds.
um, in regards to the story, the only Avalanche member that I thought was kind of off was Jesse, right? And this is probably actually my biggest negative I have on the story from what we played so far. Is like every line she has is like hitting on Cloud, right? In this, I mean, not literally every line, but just about every line
Dude,
where you
I'm
talk
in.
to her.
I'm in.
You're in.
I'm in. I don't know. I get what you're saying. Like I was just like, come on, like it's the main character. You have
Yeah,
to hit on him. We're on a mission. Like this is very dangerous. Is this a
yeah,
like, hey, so Friday, you want to go get some coffee? Are you and Tifa? Are you, you know, oh, the door's open. Oh, we're being fired at. Okay.
yeah.
I get that, but I still
But
kind of
also like that. Well, I mean, that aspect to her character was there, right?
sure.
Like, um, but I always felt that in the original, she was actually kind of more of a, like I said, like a nerdy kind of klutz, right? She even says at one point, like, when she shows Cloud the monitor, right, of the the central pillar of Midgar,
Yeah.
she's like, "Hey, come look at this with me." And like, yeah, she wants to hang out with him, she wants to talk to him, but then she like literally like goes into great detail and she says like, I really like this kind of thing, like monitors, computers, or whatever, flashy stuff.
Hmm.
Like, kind of, that's there's like, so there's like two sides to the character. There's the character that's like really enamored with Cloud, and then there's the other side of the character is like the nerdy um, member of the team, I guess, like really into computers and stuff. And it leans so heavily on the first one, like at least in the part we've played in the demo, that I didn't see the other part. So, and now
Yeah.
granted, they have a whole game to flesh out the character, right? So it
Yeah.
just may be that's how they choose to introduce her, because for the purposes of getting people excited, that's maybe gets more people excited about the character,
Right.
right? Rather than being somebody who's like, kind of a nerd, kind of obsessed with computers and stuff. So I would have liked to see a better balance of kind of the character's two traits, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But it
I can,
was
I
by
can
no means, I was not like rolling my eyes or anything. Like some of her lines, got a chuckle out of me, but it was a little much
yeah.
by the end of it. Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. It didn't particularly bother me necessarily, but I can see where you're coming from. I'm actually more interested in the character now. I want to know more because
Mm,
I guess I can look at it and I can see like if they're giving her that much screen time, they're going to try to expand that character out much more so, and
true.
that's the direction I wanted them to go with this remake. if they're going to split it in parts and flesh it out and make it a full length game. I wanted them to, flesh these characters out, flesh the world out, make it more um, just detailed, right? So I like seeing that kind of gave me hope that they were gonna keep going that route. So I guess I was kind of excited by it, and I was kind of blinded by the cheese factor occasionally, you know. But speaking of which, I thought the voice acting for all the characters was just like top notch. It was really really well done.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say 90% of the time I loved Barrett's character. However, I didn't like the elevator scene as much as everyone else did. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very strange because in the original, if you go watch the original, it's kind of similar, but there's more engagement. Like Barrett will say like one sentence, and then Cloud will say one sentence. Then Barrett will say one sentence, and then Cloud will say one sentence. And like Cloud's
And then it's over.
remarks,
Yeah.
like, and well, then it's over. Yeah, it's like two sentences each. But Cloud's remarks are what fuels Barrett up, right? But in this version, once you switch from Shinra's like scene where Heidegger's like, "Oh, we think they're the one that tried to kill you or whatever," like it just zooms in on Barrett, and he's like losing his mind, like he's like screaming and I don't know why he decided, like, why is he so mad? Like I didn't see the thing that happened before that. Like,
Right.
and and it was kind of strange because I was giving this game kudos for all the like great dialogue where it felt very natural, but it was explaining how this world worked. But during this moment, Barrett's like, Mako's the blood of the planet, and this thing's sucking the blood up, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, these people are on the mission with you.
Yeah.
Like they know this. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and then like he's just so angry. And then finally, I love it when Cloud says, like, because Barrett's like, you can't hear the planet crying out in pain, and Cloud says, like, you really hear that? And Barrett's like, damn straight, right? And he like
Hmm.
bumps his like chest or whatever. And Cloud's like, you should get help or something like that. I
Hmm.
liked that moment. That was a good moment. I was looking for more of that in that scene.
Mm.
And the thing is, like, I always saw Barrett as kind of a hothead, but he was
Yep.
always like very, to me, like trying to contain his emotion, and sometimes it would just burst, right? So like he would have like mostly like a couple words to say, you know, and that would be it, like, shut up about your pay, or whatever. And then eventually, like if you push him to the limit, he's got a lot to say, but he's kind of scary, right? But
Hmm.
in this moment, you see him like losing his mind in the elevator, and Jesse kind of looks at Cloud and she like shrugs, like, yeah, he does this, you know.
Yeah.
A-
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then like later, like Jesse's like, yeah, just ignore him, don't worry about it. And like Barrett's sitting there smiling with his machine gun, which did make me laugh. But then like a couple scenes later, Barrett's, and again, very funny. He's almost a comedic relief here. Barrett says something along the lines of, uh, what's your rank? Or like, what's your age or something like that. And and Cloud thinks he's talking about his age or his rank. And he says first, he's like, not your
Hmm.
rank, your age.
Yeah.
Right. And then he's like, unless your rank is your age, you're 1 year old or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny, but it was like very, like you were just screaming at him like a moment ago, you know? Um, so it felt different from what I read on in the game a little bit, but I still really liked the character. Like he made me laugh. Like I feel like he added a lot with the context he gave to scenes. It's just the fact that I just read the character a little bit differently, with text.
Hmm.
So just an observation. That's all.
Yeah. For me, I took it as kind of like you said, when like Cloud looks over at Jesse and she just kind of shrugs, like this. That was kind of like a nonverbal, like, yeah, this is who he is, or like, yeah, this happens from time to time, right? For me, it felt like because they were like actually going down the elevator, like towards where they're going to plant the bomb, he was
Right.
kind of trying to hype himself up and like he really wanted the other two to be like,
Like
Yeah,
chest
you know what?
bumping and
That's right.
stuff,
Like,
like woo.
yeah, like, yeah, let's do this. Like, screw the Shinra. Like that's what he wanted. That's why he's kind of like
Mm,
he's like saying like answer me and like pointing at him like what does he say? I know you can. Like he's trying to get that
macho
response to
man
kind of
Randy Savage. Yeah.
yeah like more. It's more so he wants them to validate his own very strong feelings. Like I don't know if you know anybody who's like really into politics, right? But you see the same thing when someone is like, let's say, bad mouthing either side, like they're bad mouthing conservative people or more liberal people, right? So there's some people who are really into politics who will just like get into it, and you're kind of like, maybe agreeing with some points they make, but they're just like going off and kind of demonizing the whole side, the other side, right? And they're more so they want you to validate them and be like, yeah, screw the Republicans or screw the Democrats or whichever side, like
Yeah.
that's kind of the feeling I got. Like he was like kind of trying to hype up him, not like hype up the team, but it was more so like him venting and wanting them to validate what he was saying. And so when he didn't get that, his response was just to keep pushing more and more until Cloud basically told him like, shut up, dude. Like,
Yeah. See,
like you're annoying.
I like your interpretation of it because that does make me feel a little bit better. Uh, I guess it just seemed a little uncharacteristic to me because like he was a hothead, but he wasn't. I guess if he's excited, that's a little bit better than him just being angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm looking at it through the lens of what happened in the original game, where they get on the elevator and like says like something about Shenra or something, and the Cloud's like not interested,
Yeah.
and he just cuts him off, right? And then like Barrett tries to double back, and he's like, "Cloud, the planet's dying," and Cloud's like, "Not my problem." And then
Yeah.
Barrett's like shaking his fist, and then he like calms down, like he's like, "Okay, I'm on a mission," but he's kind of upset. Whereas like now it seems like he's a little bit more vocal with his anger, whereas before he was more reserved until like he would just break, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then and those moments, that's where he would start like shooting up the block and stuff, and like just like going to town. So it felt like a little bit different take. He was kind of angry the entire demo, but it didn't feel wrong. And it was well written a lot of times, and um, I genuinely liked the character at the end. So I can't say it was bad, but
Yeah.
it did. The first time I played it, I was like, oh, this is a different take than I would have imagined. Because
Yeah. It's kind of just like taking a different path to get to the same place.
right, because
Yeah.
I and part of it's probably I have the Advent Children Barrett stuck in my head too, where he's just like calm and collect. He's not
Mm.
like losing his mind, and he's not like screaming and hollering. He's just kind of, I only say a few things.
Yeah. He's more like enthusiastic in
Yeah,
that version. He's not angry
right.
as
Which is
much.
a whole several years later. So,
Yeah.
holy crap. Where are we at? An hour and a half? Okay, we still have a lot of stuff to hit. All right, let's hit this Final Fantasy VII Remake news. Um, Jesus. Okay, let's see here. All right, so we have a couple of quotes here that we're going to bring up from a couple different articles. We're not going to read every single article because, we'll be up here till 2:00 in the morning. But Stan and me, mostly Stan, have pulled out a few quotes that we felt was very noteworthy to bring up, right? So we have this first article interview with Katase. This came from GameReactor.eu. And the link or title of the article is Remakes Links to Compilation of Final Fantasy VII Revealed. So this is what Katase said, and we're just going to trade off here. But Katase says the compilation of Final Fantasy VII was a series of expansions to the world of Final Fantasy VII that took place after the story of the main game, recalls the Japanese producer. So we kind of consider that as having been completed now, and Final Fantasy VII Remake is maybe a new start. It's a new thing. It's not really part of the compilation. This is how we viewed it. Having said that, though, even though the FF7 remake represents kind of a new start for the universe, we have very much taken into account all the extra additions to the world and the story that we've put into the compilation games and movies, and they are all represented in the backdrop and in the background of the FF7 universe. So they're all worked in there and in the story somewhere. That was a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
So what people are getting from that is that basically Katase is acknowledging that all the elements from the other games are represented in the remake. While it may not be emphasized as much as the original game, there are aspects to the compilation that are in there, which is kind of in contrast to what they were saying a couple of years ago, where they were basically like, yeah, the only thing that's canon right now is the PlayStation 1 game. The
Hmm.
other stuff we'll see, but but it seems like they've made an effort to kind of acknowledge some of the other things. Um, I mean, my basic thought on this was when I read that, I think this is please be excited. There are no changes to the remake. Everything you liked in the original will be in the remake Katase, right? Like he's just been notorious for just saying stuff that is either like highly exaggerated or just like very corporate focused, right? So like in his mind, he thinks like he's concerned about making people angry. So like this is why he's like backtracking by when he says that, oh, the FF7 remake is not part of the compilation, it's separate. He then starts to backtrack and say, but there are things that were taken into consideration. We'll get into a quote later with Nomura that I think is a little bit probably closer to the truth, but I'm not. I think we'll probably see some bigger references. Maybe Angeal might be mentioned in a cutscene, but like I don't think they're going to be like heavily using it. Like I don't think we're going to have flashbacks with Zack, and it's
Well,
like Crisis Core. I mean, maybe it is, but I don't know.
there's already two things that I noticed. Like we mentioned earlier, the that cutscene with President Shinra and Heidegger, where he says, "We're investigating if this is the group that made an attempt on your life." That's a plot point from before Crisis, the mobile game. There's a mission in there where in that game you play as the Turks
Right.
and you're actually
So
fighting the previous version of Avalanche.
to be
And
fair,
in
go
that
ahead.
game, that happens. They make an attempt on his life.
To be fair, Nomura has been quoted many, many times over the years as saying that he wants to remake that game.
Yeah.
And like, because he liked the story or whatever.
Hmm.
So, I mean, for them to bring up that element, like, I don't think is completely unreasonable. And plus, I think this is the type of stuff we're talking about. Like, they're using elements from that stuff, but I don't think that stuff is as biblical truth, right?
Right.
For this game, like the original is. It seems like there's certain things about the Final Fantasy VII PS1 game that like they're just like no, like all that stuff is going to be in there, but this other stuff, if it's useful to the game, we're going to use it, but we're not going to like go out of our way to put Genesis in the game.
Yeah.
You
Let's
know,
hope not. There's also like a little Easter egg type of thing in the demo. In the train station, one of the like billboards up there or like the posters is advertising for Benora White apple juice,
oh boy,
like from the dumb
Benora
apples.
apples, yeah,
Yeah. So that's just like that made me wonder though because like in Crisis Core, Benora White, they destroy it, right? They destroy the town,
right.
and because they want to like destroy its existence, they don't want anyone to know where Angeal or Genesis came from since they're traitors, right? They want
So
to
you,
destroy the evidence.
well,
But
maybe somebody kept an apple seed or something.
I, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But the town. Then I thought maybe
There's
they
got to be
rebuilt the town.
more trees or whatever elsewhere, right?
There could be, yeah. Yeah, it just got me thinking though, like in Crisis Core, they destroy the town and they don't rebuild it. because that's the final dungeon of the game,
I see where you're going.
right? But maybe they rebuilt the town kind of like how they rebuilt Nibelheim after that uh, incident, right? After Sephiroth burned the village down. So maybe they do the same thing. They rebuilt Benora White and had a bunch of Shinra employees living there, like the same thing, like trying to cover it up.
It's like nothing's changed.
Yeah, but I don't know why else would they even have Benora White advertisements in Midgar though if the city was if the town was destroyed. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And if they follow the same like plot as Crisis Core, you know,
This
I
might
don't
be
know.
the only time we see that, though.
Yeah, it could be. It could just be a total Easter egg, and they just don't explain it ever.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, I'd be fine with.
I mean, I don't know. That's a very good point, though. I mean, if they did destroy the town and everything like that, maybe this is a piece of propaganda. We've seen propaganda from Shinra and other ways. So,
Mhm.
this is kind of like his thing, right? Blaming stuff on other people, controlling the narrative. He's still got a mayor there that doesn't do anything because he doesn't want people to say he's a complete monarch or a dictator. So he likes to control the messaging. So it makes sense, that they would do something like that to kind of, control
Mhm.
that information. But at the same time, maybe the town's still there. Maybe that didn't happen like it did in Crisis Core. So that's a good point. I mean, they could write off Crisis Core as just like Cloud's retelling from his fractured memory, right? So he's got
Yeah.
like details that are really wrong. Um, yeah, very very interesting. Um, cool. So we have another article that Nomura's talking about this stuff. Did you want to
Yeah.
get into that?
Yeah. So kind of on the same lines, where Katase was talking about the compilation, Nomura came in with actually some more clear, distinct messaging,
Yeah,
right? And his quote, which is translated by Dual Shockers from Famitsu, says, "No characters from it, meaning the FF7 compilation, appear in this game, but certain elements from it are touched upon in a certain way. Moreover, it's not part of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII." He means FF7 Remake. "But there are characters from Nojima's side story novel, Final Fantasy VII: The Kids Are All Right, who appear in the game."
that's not a very good novel, by the way.
Oh, it's not?
I
I
don't know.
haven't read it.
I was listening to a podcast and they like kind of read it over a series of. It was a Ultima Final Fantasy podcast. Um, we
Hmm.
had we had Caleb on our podcast, and to talk about episode Arden. I forgot about that. But yeah, they did a whole review of these side story novels, and from I think they were reading like a fan translation or something, but it wasn't the best.
Okay.
But it probably was better in the original language. It wasn't terrible. It just kind of fleshed out on this idea that the if I remember correctly, I'm going from somebody else's retelling of a translated novel, so I could be getting this wrong. But the 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 sickness that's in Advent Children,
Hmm.
what's it called, genosis or something like that?
Geostigma.
No, genosis, geostigma. It kind of plays with that a little bit more. So, I mean, hey, like, uh, this is the type of stuff I was thinking. Like, if it suits the story, they'll use it. If they can do some neat little Easter eggs here and there to make the hardcore audience happy, that might the 5% of the audience that'll play it that like knows who this character is and it'll kind of give them something to talk about. Might make some cool articles or some
Hmm.
cool YouTube videos, 10 characters you didn't know are from other side stories or something like that, right? It's
Right.
just, it's kind of a cool thing, but as long as it's not like drastically changing the story, I think I'm okay with it. And it seems like that's basically what Nomura is saying here.
Yeah. He says it right there. No characters from it, the FF7 compilation, appear in the game, which is we speculated like, oh, it might be cool to see like Cisne in the game or whatever, but if we have to give up that character to make sure that Angeal and Genesis don't appear, then I'm
I
taking that trade.
I'm okay, dude. I really like Cincinnati a lot, but I have to agree with you.
Yeah, sorry, Hat. She
I
had to take one for the team.
yeah. I mean, I even like Angeal before like for the first 2 hours. So so I
Yeah,
mean, like I wouldn't mind seeing him in some way, but yeah, I think you're right. Like, let's just not touch it at all because once you open that box, you can't close it.
yeah.
So
They just kind of get in the way of this story anyway.
yeah,
That's how
for
I feel
sure.
about it.
So Nomura goes on to do another quote where he's talking about Cloud, and he says Cloud in the Final Fantasy VII Remake is weird. There are many times when he tries to act cool, but fails or acts awkwardly. He gets nervous where most people wouldn't. This might surprise you, as the Cloud in Advent Children was cool, but that's because it was post Final Fantasy VII Cloud. Plus, we were limited, so we focused on emphasizing his cool side. However, in the original game, Cloud had many comical or lame moments, and this was what we want for the remake. I asked uh, the voice actor for Cloud, the Japanese voice actor. I can't say his name, so I'm not going to. But he voices Cloud to reflect that in his acting. I hope you'll enjoy it. Interesting. I think we kind of
Yeah,
they kind of hinted at this back when they were having that like seven Final Fantasy art show, and Nomura came out on stage and kind of talked about Cloud, and we didn't get video of it, but people that attended the VIP only event said that he kind of talked about Cloud being a little dorkier than the
hmm
the cool version you see in the later media.
yeah. This
So
is a this is a good sign, I think,
yeah, I'm
that they
surprised
that
that
they yeah that they realized that like the Cloud from the original FF7 and the Cloud that they portrayed in Avid Children, a lot of people don't see that as the same character, you know.
yeah.
So they it sounds like he tries to act cool but fails or acts awkwardly. That kind of sound to me. I got that feeling when he said that it's my line,
Right.
like he's trying to act cool. That's very much what that felt like to me.
Yeah, but it was appropriate. It wasn't like the writers wanted us to think he was cool.
Yeah,
Like
at least I hope not, because
right.
that's how I felt about it.
Hey man, he can't pull it as well as Balthier. Not till
No,
game
no,
3.
yeah. So hopefully we'll get that kind of awkward Cloud sometimes, in the game.
Yeah, very
That's
cool.
encouraging.
You want to take the next quote?
Yeah, so the next one is talking about the game being split up into parts. And this is Nomura again. He says, I know many are worried since the remake project is in multiple games, and the first game only depicts Midgar. Don't worry. It is a highly dense game, and it doesn't end after a few hours like the Midgar part in the original. There are many new events in the main story, like a scene where you end up visiting Jesse's parents eating dinner. Each member of Avalanche is much more detailed compared to the original game, with new events to boot. By the time players leave Midgar, I'm sure they'll be satisfied. So that's quite a big promise that he made there.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I don't know. There's always going to be people who say they would have preferred the Midgar section to be shorter and just kind of get into the other parts of the story faster. But I mean, he's really saying here it's a complete AAA JRPG, right? This game, not just in terms of gameplay content, but we're actually adding enough story. So they're gonna. My guess is that even though they're not playable, these the Avalanche members are gonna feel like main characters by the end of the game, almost. Like you're gonna know their backstory. You're probably gonna know like their reasons for following Barrett and joining Avalanche. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I kind of have to. I don't know about the "I'm sure they'll be satisfied" thing, because that's
Yeah.
yeah,
So
you're gonna have to see how it plays out.
honestly, like this type of quote really gets me excited though, because again, this is the type of stuff I want them to do if they're gonna focus, on this game in parts and really take a creative effort here and like really expand on it. I mean, I love that he mentions that we're gonna meet Jesse's parents and we're gonna have dinner with them. I mean, like I don't know, like that's just cool. Like I like that's expanding the story. I could see that being a very awkward scene because he talks about Cloud being awkward. So I can
Hmm.
see Cloud call maybe choking on a piece of food or not knowing what to say. And like it just being very nerve wracking for him. And I think this is really going to expand this world a lot more. So I'm glad that, Nomura's excited about this stuff and that he's focused on this type of stuff because, sometimes with Nomura, I'm a little unsure where he stands because he makes stuff look really cool, but, his I'm never sure where he is on a storytelling front, but this seems like great ideas to me. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm a little, I don't know, on the fence about it. I want to play the game, and then because if I play the game and it feels like the story is kind of dragging its feet, then it's going to be like, oh, maybe they should have, gone a little bit farther past Midgar. But if it is worthwhile, and if you are able to kind of connect with the Avalanche characters better, then it will probably be worth it. So,
Yeah. We'll have to see. Um, Real quick, Tori Blake says, and I've seen this a few times on Discord, says, okay, all this Final Fantasy VII Remake talk is great, but has Hat ever explained his name? I've never met anyone named Hat, and I'm really curious if that's his real name, or have I just not been hearing him correctly? So the easiest way to explain this, I was in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, we go by last names, and naturally, most people's last name gets condensed, to a very short form of it. So or they make up nicknames like I knew one guy, his last name was Woodell, right? And everyone called him Woody, right?
hmm.
And people still call him Woody to this day because it just like you just live on base for years, right? And then like everyone in town knows you by this nickname, and like so my nickname was Hat, and that stuck with me after I left because that's what all my friends started calling me, and like even people that weren't in the Marine Corps that I knew out in town called me that, and they hit me up on you know social media and stuff, and they still call me that. They text me to check in, and so it's a nickname, but a lot of people call me that in real life. So, um, but yeah, that's the origins. I wish I had something cooler, but
That's a
uh,
military name. That's cool.
yeah, kind of like soldier. I'm just kidding. Anyways, so there's another quote here though that we want to get into, and God damn it, I had it up on my screen. Okay. So this is Tetsuya Nomura again, and he's talking about the side quest content. Now, if you remember a couple episodes ago, I was kind of trashing the side quests that they showed off, right? Where they showed off the rat problem
Hmm.
and our problem in the sewer or whatever, and it was a rat problem. I was like, oh my god, this is the most generic JRPG quest known to man. Even Western RPGs do this, where like you go back to like 1992. There's somebody in like a bar that's like, I got a lot of rats down in the cellar. You want to clean it out? It's just like, dude, 2020, we don't need these quests anymore. Get out of here. And they had a similar one, nuisance in the factory, and we were trying to give them some possible outs here, like maybe like the rats are eating mako, and like they're like I think that
Yeah,
was your
I think I
your
suggested that.
yeah your solution there that like instead of hiring an exterminator, they needed to hire a mercenary because the rats are eating mako, and they're like huge rats. But then what about the nuisance in the factory? It's like seems like the same type of quest. So we were concerned that like this is going to be like how they padded out the game, but we thought maybe this was just some side stuff to make money, but not like all the quests are like this, right? So Nomura kind of talks about this and he says, we made the side quest content to be as big as the main story. At the beginning, the development team readied even more content, but we wouldn't have been able to do everything without cutting corners. So we prioritized quality. We wouldn't have been able to finish the game otherwise. Despite that, the game is quite big. There are many places you can visit, and you can even move around using vehicles at some point. I love this, mainly for the first sentence. We made the side quest content to be as big as the main story. I hope that's true to form, and I hope he's not exaggerating here,
Hmm.
because that's how side quests should be, man. I mean, I don't know if they have to be as big as the main story, but I think they should require as much care from a narrative standpoint as you would put towards the main story. Because like whether or not it's a side quest or you're doing the main mission, that time that you're spending with the game is equal. Like it's the same amount of your life that's gone, right? Like you're not getting that time back. So it's very relative on how you spend that time. So if you're going to ask me to do stuff, make it narratively enjoyable, because that's why one of the reasons why people like Final Fantasy VII is because of its story. Like it needs to have a very solid story, right? So if they're putting that much effort into the side quests, I'm really, really excited. And
Yeah,
I like that they prioritize quality instead of quantity too. He points that
yeah. I
out.
was gonna
So
say that's the most encouraging part of that quote.
100
We
gigabytes
prioritize
of
quality.
quality, 100 gigabytes of quality, two Blu-ray discs of quality.
Yeah,
Yeah. That better be a damn fine rat problem.
yeah,
No, I'm
yeah.
just,
I hope all the quests have like at least little tidbits of story or something.
yeah,
Like we shall see.
we shall
You
see.
know, it's another one of those wait and see things, but it does sound promising.
Yeah. We got another one. You want to take the next one?
Sure. Another quote from Nomura, and this is kind of how he ended the interview. He said, "The remake will be releasing soon, but it's not like it's overwriting the original FF7. The original game is the source of everything, and it's thanks to it we were able to make a new, unique experience. Fans of the original game will have a different, new experience compared to when they played the original. And I hope those who discover everything with the remake will enjoy it too. This is the first part of the remake, but it's still a full fledged game, and you'll be satisfied after playing it. Once you try out the game, you'll definitely have a hard time putting it down. Please look forward to it.
That's my favorite part. Please
Please
look
look
forward
forward
to it.
to." Yeah. That's
Like,
like one of their favorite phrases.
I feel like he just ended the sentence on, once you try out the game, you'll definitely have a hard time putting it down. And then he just stopped. And then like a Square Enix aide ran out with a flash card and he was like, oh, please look forward to it.
Yeah.
um, cool, man. What
The
do you
part I
think?
like about this is in the beginning when he said it's not overriding the original game. Like the original game is still going to have its place, right? It's still where this all came from. So, and then it's also like suggesting even more so, like they've been trying to make more clear that this is like a reinterpretation or like a reimagining
Hmm.
of the same story, just told in a different way,
Right.
which I think is the smarter way to go about things. Like, for sure, you're going to disappoint some people who wanted to see the original game and the original story like carried out to the T and just like really spot on, but in a higher quality graphics engine, you know. But at the same time, if they do things differently and like make bits and pieces of changes, like story changes every so often,
Hmm.
then it becomes its own thing, right? It's not just like a new version of something you've played before. It has its own story almost, even though it's very similar. It's like he said, a new unique experience.
Yeah. You know, I I can applaud them for taking like a huge risk here in going for building a new experience, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they could have just played it safe and just made it like basically like a direct remake, like a lot of people wanted,
Mhm.
made Cloud look a little bit more realistic, maybe put some voice acting in there, but really keep it largely the same, not make any changes. I can like I this is a ballsy move, changing stuff, and
Right.
that has some merit in of itself. But I think that you also have to realize it has merit because there's a risk, and the risk is you're going to mess it up, right? And
Yeah.
and that's why there's merit there because there's a level of risk, and so they have to recognize if they mess this up, like, and it's a valid criticism, that's going to be justified.
Hmm.
So I think this is definitely a very, very gutsy route for them, but I think that they're doing a good job from what I've seen for the most part. So yeah,
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's still a month away though.
still a month away.
Please look forward to it.
Please be excited. Yeah. All right, so let's get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way here. I think I meant to do this a little bit earlier, but here's a good enough place. I just want to remind you all that our media partner is RPG Fan, and you can go to their website at rpgfan.com. They also have their YouTube page, which they're starting to put a little bit more reviews and stuff on there. They're trying to build that out. So go check them out. I actually did the voiceover for their um, Fire Emblem Three Houses DLC review. So that was kind of a interesting experience, recording that voiceover and, reading somebody else's lines. When you write stuff a certain way and you talk a certain way, you can kind of get used to the way you talk and your natural pauses and the ways that you like to phrase things. So it was a little bit different having to read somebody else's words and, they tend to carry on a sentence a little longer than I would, or maybe they use certain words that I don't use. And so it was kind of a unique experience. I think it turned out pretty good. So go to their YouTube page. Just you can search, or I think it's in our description also. You can go to their YouTube page and just check out that review. It was a lot of fun. I got the code for free. I got to record the game footage for the review also. So it was a lot of fun. But they have two other RPG podcasts, Random Encounter, which does RPG news, discussions, opinions. That's twice a month. It's very open. They bring a lot of the reviewers on RPG Fan in, and it's just kind of like a different lineup. And they go through there and just kind of talk about what they've been playing. So anything that's big in the news, they talk about. So I was actually going to be on that recently, but I had something that popped up. But I'm sure I'll appear on there in the future. And so definitely go check them out. And it'd be really cool if I could appear on there in the future. Also, they have Retro Encounter, which is like a book styled RPG podcast. So, they're just going through super in depth on these games, and it's a lot of fun as well. So, definitely go check them out. This week, they have written reviews for Rune Factory 4 on Switch and BattleTech for PC. So, those are two games that I'm not particularly interested in, but that's a good outlet to go to see some other stuff, some other coverage on some of the games that we don't really talk about as much on here. So definitely go check them out. Also, our YouTube channel, we're going to be doing a Final Fantasy VII discussion. I'm currently replaying Final Fantasy VII, not literally right now, but currently I'm replaying Final Fantasy VII. Stan's playing it. I know Eric is as well. And we're going to be doing a full-length discussion similar to our Crisis Core discussion. Link to that is in the description, by the way, where we're just going to go super in-depth. I'm sure it's going to be very long. Our Crisis Core one was 3 hours long, but we're just going to be talking about the story, the gameplay, everything along those lines. And that'll be coming out this month. We have a date selected that we're aiming to do the conversation. We'll be releasing it separately from the podcast. So if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. That way you can be sure not to miss that. And the idea here is we're going to try to get this out before the remake. So that way we're fully up to date and we can just go right into the remake, having just completed Final Fantasy VII and Crisis Core not too long ago. So I think we'll be fully up to date. So it should be a lot of fun. Next, we're going to be doing a new segment of the podcast. This is an experiment. And so we're going to be displaying an image of a character. We've graded the character out, but they're a popular JRPG character. And we want people to guess in the comments who this character is, and we want to see if anybody can get it. And or we're looking at maybe incentivizing this a little bit in the future, but maybe kind of throwing some hints out at some games we might want to cover in the future. But we want to see if you guys can get it. So I'm going to go ahead and get this on the screen here in just 1 second. All right. So this is the image of this character. Now, again, go ahead and comment in the comments of the YouTube video itself. Let us know if you know who this character is. Eric is actually the one that picked this character out. So I don't know if that's going to help at all, but we will let you know who it was next week. I'm sure a lot of you already know, or you'll be able to figure out in between then. And, but we'll officially say who it is next episode. Stan, you got anything to say on this?
I'm just looking at the image and trying to guess the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know in the comments or like on Twitter if you want to tweet at Phoenix Edge who you think it is.
Yeah, Eric picked this character out, and then like I like saw the character not grayed out, and I told Eric I still don't know who that is. So I'm very interested to see. Okay, so let's move on to our last topic here. We're going to finish off strong. I was tempted to just cut it short, but I think we can do this. What do you think, Stan?
Sure, go for it.
All right. So there's this new game. Well, it's not new. Well, I guess it is new. It's another game in this, based off the. I'm just gonna get the trailer up here before I start talking. All right, so there was this game that came out on the PlayStation 1, I believe, and it was like this tactile strategy RPG. It gained a cult following. It was called Brigandine, and a lot of people really liked it for its in-depth mechanics. And it had some sore spots with certain people, but a lot of people really liked it. So there's going to be a new game coming out in that, I don't want to say series because I think this is only the second one, but it's going to be doing all the same stuff that people loved from the original. Let me get up the video here and just see if I can kind of show that up. But Stan, do you want to kind of read the game description there while I get the video ready?
Sure. So, like Hat said, this is a strategy RPG similar to like a Final Fantasy Tactics or a Fire Emblem type of game. And the description that they've given for the new game says in Runerzia, a continent created by the rune god, mana rains down endlessly. Eons ago, 5 mana stones were brought forth by this continent and passes through history alongside human nations, eventually embedding into special Brigandine equipment to create rune knights, special individuals who can wield the mana power and stones embedded into their armor and cast skills and magic, as well as summons and control ancient monsters. 6 Brigandine countries of Runerzia, each with conflicting ideals, beliefs, histories, and faiths, are divided by brigandines of justice, glory, freedom, sanctity, and ego, while the 6th country exists without brigandine. The goal is to win battles to expand their country's influence until the entire continent of Runerzia has been taken over by the player.
Wow.
So I kind of fumbled through that. It was quite a bit, but
I feel like that was a novel.
Yeah, they gave you the full backstory and the premise of the game all in one. But it sounds like you're gonna pick a faction or like a country, right? And then you have to go through and conquer the other 5.
Yeah,
that's the premise. And there's like a kind of like a Pokemon, like a monster taming aspect to it as well, because I think a lot of the units you use are monsters like dragons and uh, creatures of that sort. So.
Yeah, I know that like people like that are like big fans of the PS1 game. A lot of it has to do with the gameplay, right? I know that RPG fan, like they go back and a long ways, and they reviewed this game, and they praised the gameplay. And also, it's kind of funny, like traveling back in time like this, the proportionate enemies, right? So, for example, the dragon that you might encounter will have a huge animation, but a fairy character will be just like a small speck in comparison to the dragon. So this was like a unique thing for these types of strategy RPGs because usually, all the characters were kind of like the same size, right? The same size sprite. So it stood out. But
Mm.
the areas where this kind of didn't meet everyone's expectations was the story was just kind of like there. It was just more like a premise. I think the game was more based on the gameplay. They weren't trying to tell this huge tale. A lot of people were probably used to Final Fantasy Tactics with this, you know, in-depth story, right? And the music actually got a lot of criticism and that it wasn't bad, it was just boring. But where this game stood out was the gameplay because of how deep the mechanics got. So this is coming out on June 25th, 2020. And I think it's noteworthy to bring up because it seems like they're kind of addressing their weak areas, right? So you have the scenario writer for Final Fantasy 1 through 3, who's basically coming out of retirement from video games to work on this, right?
Hmm.
And then the character designer from, where are they from again? Xenoblade?
Yeah, the original Xenoblade Chronicles.
Which is,
Just the first.
yeah, just a character designer. So, but still, that's huge, right? So they're
Yep.
kind of addressing the fact that the scenario was kind of boring, but also they're kind of giving this visual upgrade with a very notable style. Which, if you're watching this trailer on screen right now, like this looks really good. I mean, at least the art style here, like I'm really digging it. But then
Yeah.
also they're addressing the music by bringing the composer from the Disgaea series, and that composer's done other stuff too. But I mean, that composer of that series, say what you want, but that guy just like mops the floor with like just these compositions. Like he's just got this very unique style of just having this very like eclectic combination of like jazz, and then it'll be like all very like uh almost like Latin like guitars and like Spanish sounding guitars, and like it's just a very interesting style. But he can also do the very um traditional like medieval type stuff too, very well. I love this guy's soundtracks. I listen to him pretty frequently, so I'm actually really excited that they're bringing him on board. So I think like this looks very very promising.
Yeah. They've they've maybe not the most famous names you've ever heard of, but it is definitely people who have had success in the past.
I
So
I find it
they're
weird.
putting resources into the game, which is encouraging. Not just kind of like a doesn't look like it's going to be just kind of a cash grab, trying to bank on people's like a niche crowds like nostalgia or anything. It looks like they're trying to put together a good game.
Yeah, and they're obviously still promising to bring that same gameplay that people really enjoyed from the original. I
Yeah.
have to be honest though, if the story was lacking, right? I'm not sure what the scenario writer will do from Final Fantasy 1 through 3. I realize he's just writing the scenario of the game, right? So like
Hmm.
the premise basically, or maybe like instances within the game, like stuff like that, right? But Final Fantasy 1 through 3, I'm assuming they mean the, Japanese 1 through 3. Well, that would have to be because 3, well, whatever. It's 1 through 3 on the NES, right? Those weren't necessarily known for having like the
Most,
craziest
yeah, the best
narratives.
story.
Yeah. I mean, I liked Final Fantasy 2's story, but it was clearly took a lot of influence from Star Wars. And really, I just kind of like it because it's like a bold take on an NES RPG, right? But if it was like a Super Nintendo RPG, I don't know if I would really like the story as much. And then Final Fantasy 3, like, because of the amount of content they put into that game, they really had to be very limited with the story. So,
Hmm.
um, and obviously Final Fantasy 1's just kind of like go on your adventure.
Right.
So I don't know if this is really um
Well, they in the description they talk about 6 different countries, all with different conflicting ideals, beliefs, histories, and faiths. So it seems like the groundwork, the setting is there for an interesting story. At least we'll have to
that's
see what he does with it.
yeah. I mean, it's not yeah, it's I think I was phrasing this all wrong. It's not bad that he's involved,
Hmm.
but I think it's a little misleading when they're like
He doesn't. Yeah,
Final
he doesn't
Fantasy.
exact
Yeah.
right 1 through 3. Yeah, he doesn't really. At least for the Western audience, he's involved with a bunch of anime that I had never heard of before. But at least for the Western audience, it doesn't really feel like he necessarily has that feather in his cap, right? That you can point to and be like, that's the, oh, this is the guy from that great story, right?
Yeah.
For us, it's kind of like, well, he was involved with Final Fantasy before it really kind of took off in the golden era. So we're kind of on the fence, I guess. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it looks really, really good. It's coming out in June, so uh that'll be exciting. I think we according to your research on this game, you said it's only going to be a eShop or there'll be a
Yeah.
physical edition with limited run games.
Yeah. So it's, if you want a physical, if you're a collector and you want the physical version, you have to go to, I think it's limitedrungames.com, or just Google limited run games. I'm sure it'll pop up. But they're the only, they have like exclusive rights to make a sell a physical copy of the game.
Yeah, you see that a lot where I mean, they had physical editions of Cosmic Star Heroine, which is a game you can only, the indie game you can only get now digitally.
Mm-hmm.
They do that a lot with these games. So
Which is pretty
very,
cool.
yeah, looks really cool. So awesome. Let me,
Yeah, and this, the most interesting thing about this game to me is the fact that it's from 1998 and it's getting a sequel in 2020. It's like, how often does that happen?
yeah, man, it's almost like if they did something with the Legend of Dragoon.
Right? Yeah, 22 years apart from sequel.
A
Maybe
bunch of,
maybe that means there's hope for Shadow Hearts or some of those other
well,
games.
at least that game is like 4 games. At least like
Yeah,
at least we saw like an arc where it was like kind of good, then it got really good, and then it got really bad. You know, well, not really bad, just kind of like not as good as it was. But anyways, yeah, it is interesting though that it's been that long, and what caused them to want to revisit this now. You know,
I have to think that they're trying to kind of bank on the Fire Emblem popularity on the Switch,
but
since it's like kind of a similar gameplay.
this game's coming out in June though. You think like they just started in like August?
Oh, maybe not.
you
Probably
know,
not.
because the game came out in July, and they're like, "Oh, this is successful. Let's do that."
That's
You know,
true. Well, yeah, I don't know then, but it is interesting.
yeah, definitely for sure. So next week we are going to have some more topics. Obviously, we'll have to see. We've been covering a lot of Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff just because there's been a lot of stuff to get into. If something else pops up, we'll probably cover that again. Because once the stuff's gone, we're probably not gonna, be able to talk about it. So, um, but yeah, we're still going to be talking about other stuff too, other RPGs. There's a lot of gaming news out there too. We could probably get into with, apparently E3 might be canceled. You know, that's a possibility. So, um, a lot of interesting stuff to get into outside of what we've been covering, but we'll have to see next week. Stan, final words.
Well, please be excited.
I'll see y'all next week. Please be excited.
See you next time.